Okay, let's get to the heart of this because I think we're dancing around it, and I think it's time to deal with this. And before I do this, I want to bring up something that's important. As much as the Canucks and Jim Benning have had this, the fact of the matter is the Flames and the Canucks, with Treliving and Benning in charge, have the same amount of playoff series wins, one. And I'm not counting the qualifiers; they don't count.
No.
Since the Flames beat the Canucks in 2015, they have won 4 playoff games. And they won 2 against the Dallas Stars. They got swept against Anaheim. They basically got swept against Colorado, except for the miracle game by Mike Smith. Why is Brad Treliving not on the hot seat? Do we have the poll there? I posted a poll where Brad Treliving is. He's getting a C, no A's, B, and D to F. I think that it's time to have some hard questions about Brad Treliving. Like you said, the Troy Brouwer signing didn't work out, but he signed it. He also went and signed Chad Johnson. No, not Ocho Cinco, the goaltender Chad Johnson. He signed James Neal. That's partially his responsibility. He got Elias Lindholm and Noah Hannafin. That's good. We'll debate the Lucic for Neal trade, but he's hired 4 coaches, and I don't think that and you could debate that this is an ownership issue in terms of not wanting to spend money, but I think the fact that he's been able to talk his way out of he has the media savvy that Canucks have been looking for Jim Benning has probably saved them, but I think that there's a legitimate question of putting Brad Treliving on some sort of hot seat in Calgary. This team is 7-6-1.
Yeah, I don't, Sean and Devin and Chris, you guys are in Calgary. I get the sense that it's just not a media market that runs people out of town very easily. I mean, I think in other places that it's pretty quick when the finger starts getting pointed. But in Calgary, I don't know. It feels like the fans are pretty patient with Brad Treliving. As a whole, and the media certainly, they're not constantly, from what I can tell, trying to create narratives that are aimed at managerial change. I mean, you've got Eric Francis is one of the people with the biggest platforms, and he's an apologist for the organization most of the time. So I think that has something to do with it. There just simply isn't the people in the market that are turning up the heat for whatever reason on the Calgary Flames, even though the facts say that Brad Treliving's, had quite a while and not a lot of playoff success to show for it.
Devin and Sean can tell me I'm wrong if they want, but to me, as someone who's lived in Calgary for the past 5-ish years, they view the Flames more as a fun entertainment piece as opposed to living and breathing type fandom.
I would say it's a little bit like that, but I think the living and dying by your team is still here in Calgary.
There's still definitely those guys. It just doesn't feel like it's nearly at the same level as like Canucks Twitter.
That's where I was about to go. Is it's not in public spheres. Yeah, it's in group chats. It's in Discord channels that the people started and have grown. It's not on Twitter, like Vancouver Canucks Twitter, and Toronto and Montreal. It's not in the public. And because it's not, you're not holding there isn't enough mainstream holding the coaches and the GM specifically accountable for the lack of success that the Flames have had over this tenure.
The biggest heat that they faced, and the biggest, like him or not, the biggest voice for the Flames is still Eric Francis, and he's a protector of the team. He is not a guy that will go after the team or criticize the team. And I think that he took a little bit. I think that I think people are the Flames fans, I think, are starting to feel frustrated with that when he tweets out that we got more out of Johnny Gaudreau in the last 7 years on spit and chicklets than he did. That's because you've been trying to run, he runs about it. He's nice to management and hard to players. And I think my theory is, and I could be completely wrong in terms of the players, I think that they're completely turned off by him. I think management has probably used Eric Francis as a bit of a media voice, and I don't like. Sorry if I say this, and it pisses some people off in Calgary, but I think a lot of the fan base has lost respect for Eric Francis, and I
think it's the opposite in Vancouver. I think the players get a bit of a pass with the media in a lot of cases, and it's coaching and management and even ownership sometimes where the criticism is pointed.
Sorry, Devin, I jumped ahead on you there. Go ahead.
No, it's all good. I do. Yeah, Francis. He is a players. He's not kind to players at all. And he is a bit of an apologist for the team. But I think also Ryan Pinder. I think Ryan Pinder on the morning show here in Fan 960. He really does a good job in not having a biased opinion. He likes to ruffle feathers. He says what's on his mind. So I appreciate that about him. But yeah, it does seem like there's not as much. You don't have like the far right or the far left kind of like combating each other in the media. And I think along with that, you do have now, unfortunately, you don't have two stations in Vancouver anymore. And I think that was part of it as well, is that you had combative ideas and you wanted to get the most viewership. So you did have that polaristic view from one side to the other, and Calgary just doesn't have that.
Yeah, I think that's huge. I mean, I'm curious in Edmonton. I don't know, but I don't listen a lot. But I'm assuming that the rights holders are a bit more defend the team, and TSN Edmonton is more critical. That's what I've heard little bits of.
I would say the criticism in that market comes from the print media.
Yeah.
And even though Mark Spector's working for Sportsnet, I mean, his background is in sports writing as well, and I mean, he's fairly critical of the team, and sometimes the star players as well there too. But I think it comes from the print media mainly in Edmonton. TSN radio, I don't listen to it in Edmonton there, but I still think there's generally a decent level of supportiveness for the Oilers. I don't think they're going after them very hard. And then, I mean, Bob Stauffer is a color guy. He's pretty pro Oilers.
Yeah, he's every game he's posting something positive. Yeah.
The other difference between Calgary and Vancouver media is even now with only one station in Vancouver, they still have like all day their own like all day local content. The only time they don't necessarily have quote unquote local content is the Scott Rintoul show when they're sharing it with 960. While 960 has always been run on a bit more of a shoestring budget, and they haven't built up all the different shows and different personalities. Before the shutdown of 1040, you had two stations that had a morning show, a mid-morning show, an afternoon show, a drive home show, an evening show. There were shows on the weekends. That has never been that way in Calgary, and they're finding ways to share syndicated programs on radio as opposed to providing that local content that I think a lot of people would love, and that would turn up the heat because you're providing more voice. You're giving platforms to more voices. You're giving platforms to more voices, to more people to listen, and to create more discussions and talking points. So I think you're right. I think there's definitely in Calgary, the players definitely get a lot more of it. But while in Vancouver, it's all about the GM and the cap issues and the coaching and the ownership. So two different markets, two different ways how people do it. But I do think that someone needs to start talking about whether or not it's time to look at what Brad Treliving has done and if he's done enough. On that poll, I voted a C, and I think that was generous. As Kevin said, they've won one they've won one playoff round under his tenure. It was his first year, and then they've done nothing. It's he's made a couple good trades, but he also gave up like some really impactful players in that trade to get Hanifin and Lindholm. Yes, those two fit really well, but they also gave up Dougie Hamilton, who is one of the best defensemen in the NHL, just because he didn't fit in with the locker room, because they weren't able to figure out how to make that locker room work. And this locker room I still think there's a question on this locker room. And is that the player? How much is that the players, and how much is that the GM for actually building a team that can actually mesh in the locker room properly?
I mean, there's no as much as Markstrom, Tanev were as much as those signings were, that was also assigned to that dressing room. They were put in to be in a leadership part of the core of that dressing room. So that is a telltale sign of something going on there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this might be a bit draining, but I'm gonna run down the list of trades that he's done well with. Okay, because I think his trading, there's some question marks. You did have the Hamonic trade, which turned out to be a first-round pick of Noah Dobson, who's going to be probably in the NHL for at least a decade or so.
If you have a chance, go watch him play for the Islanders. He is good.
But if going back,
non-lottery protected trade for Travis Hamonic.
That's right. Starting in 2015, he did the Glenn Cross trade because Glenn Cross, we weren't making the playoffs, or it didn't look like it at least. And he got 2 picks out of that, which is fantastic. The Sven Berchi trade turned into Rasmus Andersson, who will be a massive part on this back end here. He did make a massive trade for Dougie Hamilton because of the same problems that Dougie Hamilton had in Boston, not being able to fit into the locker room. He made a gamble, and you know what? Yeah, okay. It didn't really work out here with Dougie Hamilton, but he did get a 1A, 1B center in Elias Lindholm, who's been a massive part of this team. You did get Noah Hanifin, who, as of this year, all of a sudden he decides he has the confidence to play the way that he's been expected to play, being a number or first-round draft pick. Going down the list here, you have a trade that he made to pick up a pick for Oliver Shillington, second-round pick. He traded Chris Russell for Yoki Paka, which is a great name, by the way, and got
that is a great name. I'll give him that.
He got a second round pick, which turned into Dylan Dubé. And he also got traded David Jones to Minnesota for Nicholas Backstrom, nicknamed the arm hair guy, and they got Matthew Phillips, who could be a potential NHLer as well. He's traded for a 7th round pick for Dustin Wolf, who could be potentially this number 1 goalie after Jacob Markstrom. And then obviously the Travis Hamonic trade. Then he traded, in 2018, he had the Ferlin, Adam Fox, and Dougie Hamilton trade, like I already talked about. And then you come down to the James Neal, the Lucic trade. And yes, okay, Lucic being signed, Neal being signed to that contract probably wasn't the best move. It definitely wasn't the best move, and that's on him. Troy Brouwer signing didn't work out. That's on him for sure. But the one thing I do want to say is, I know we're going to get to this. I'm going to bring it up now. There are people out there who are Flames fans who are trying to say that we won the trade with Edmonton, and to a certain extent, yes, we did. Is it putting lipstick on a pig? Sure. If you want to put it that way, you definitely can. But the fact is that James Neal was on waivers yesterday, and Milan Lucic is still playing a role for this Calgary Flames team. And yes, the contract is shitty. Besides that, Brad Treliving made the better trade there, and he made a gamble for Lucic, and Lucic is still he's still an NHLer in my mind. Yes, he's a 4th liner at best, but it's something that Calgary was lacking, was the physicality, was having a big player that could throw his body around to, quote unquote, keep people in check. And don't think that still has a an effect in this league, because it does for sure. Is it as effective as it was a couple years ago? No, but I think overall, with his drafting, with Treliving's drafting, and with his trading, I think he deserves a better grade than a C.
I just want to point out something before Sean responds. The Dougie Hamilton trade that they acquired, that first round pick was in the Matthew Barzal area. I'm just pointing that out. Whether you, that's all that's just putting that in there.
Well, Boston had 3 number 1 picks back to back to back, and
There was Barzal, there was DeBrusk.
Yep, and there's Lecision, and 2 of those players, who, and you have Jake DeBrusk, who's a good, solid mid-range player for sure.
Man, that's such a swing and a miss for Boston in that 3. They could have had so many game breakers. They could have had Kyle Connor. They could have had Matthew Barzal. Like, jeez. Yeah, and I get that, all that. Yeah, he's made good trades, but what has it actually all created for the Flames?
Great.
Has it created any actual success?
Dylan Dubé. Yeah,
has
Dylan
it
Dubé.
created
Yeah, Dustin
actual
Wolf.
any team success?
Not yet, Sean. That's what I'm getting at, man. Fuck.
Yeah,
These are all young players.
It feels like tinkering to me is what it's been.
But if you've been at this for 7 years, Devin, that Brad Treliving has, shouldn't we be seeing more than 1 division title, 1 playoff series victory, and more than 4 other wins other than that 1 series win? Shouldn't there be some sort of progression that we've seen here? Like,
we've seen progression for sure. It's a slow process. Once again, it's all about the process within it, right? And yes, there's little tinkering here and there, but the one thing I do agree with Sean is that there's something wrong in that dressing room, and that needs to be figured out. It has to be, but I don't think that's up on the GMs if that's the case, then the GM, yeah, he needs to be making moves, but at the same time, you're not going to be trading somebody for the sake of fucking trading somebody and get a shitty return. If the return's not there, then you need 2 GMs ready to make a trade. And if there's not a good trade out there to make, then it's fucking pointless.
Yeah, but for Treliving, who has been as active trading as possible, I'm surprised he hasn't found a trade for Monahan or Gaudreau, because I honestly think those are the 2 you need to find a way to make a move on one of them, because I think those 2 are way too comfortable with each other as line mates. You go back to last year, I've brought this up on this podcast a few times, where they went to Jeff Ward and begged him to put Elias Lindholm back on their wing because they liked him better. Like, instead of having what everyone says, and Lindholm is proving it this year, he's a better center than he is a winger. And the fact is that they have the sway to do that to their coach, and they do not understand the bigger picture of playing, of having a deeper roster so that you can do that. Says a lot to in terms of me, and the fact that he hasn't found a way to fix that is, and this something's been wrong with this roster and this locker room for years, all under the supervision of Brad Treliving. And I get it. It's such a hard topic to try and figure out who actually needs to own up to this more than than anyone else. Is it the players, or is it the GM for building that team? And this is Brad Treliving's team. This is the team that he has built, and it still has the same issues that it's had for the past 3, 4, 5, 6 years.
You got to remember also that Johnny and Monty, they are who they are, but at that point, they're still growing, right? They were still kids when they came in. But I agree with you. There are things that Brad Treliving needs to be accountable for, but I don't think is as much as you're making it out to be, because the other thing, okay, on the opposite end, yes, the players, there's 24 players within that roster right there that are professionals, they're men, and they need to own up to their fucking shit. That's great. 24 compared to one person. And to your point at the beginning of your rant there, Sean, it is weird that Brad Treliving hasn't found a partner if he's been shopping Johnny and Monty. But at the same time, he's not afraid to pull that trigger. And I truly believe with his trade history, if he doesn't like what he's going to be getting back, he's not making that trade. And that's what smart GMs do.